up the counting-house arrived. With an ill will, Scrooge, dismounting from his stool, tacitly admitted the fact to the expectant clerk, who instantly snuffed his candle out and put on his hat. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?" "If quite convenient, sir." "It is not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop half a crown for it, you'd think yourself mightily ill-used, I'll be bound." "Yes, sir." "And yet you don't think me ill-used, when I pay a day's wages for no work?" "It's only once a year, sir." "A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December. But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier the next morning." The clerk promised that he would, and Scrooge walked out with a growl. The hour of shutting the counting-house had arrived. "You'll want all day off tomorrow, I suppose?" "If it's convenient, sir." "It is not convenient, and I should not have to pay you when you're not working." "It's only one day a year, sir." "A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket. Fine, take the whole day, but be here early the next morning." Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers, and beguiled the rest of the evening with his banker's book, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which had once belonged to his deceased partner. They were a gloomy suite of rooms in a lowering pile of building up a yard. The building was old enough now and dreary enough, for nobody lived in it but Scrooge, the other rooms being all let out as offices. Now, it is a fact that there was nothing at all particular about the knocker on the door of his house, except that it was very large. Also that Scrooge had seen it night and morning during his whole residence in that place. Also that Scrooge had as little of what is called fancy about him as any man in the city of London. And yet Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any intermediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face! Marley's face with a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but it looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look, with ghostly spectacles turned up upon its ghostly forehead. As Scrooge looked fixedly at this phenomenon, it was a knocker again. He said, "Pooh, pooh," and closed the door with a bang. The sound resounded through the house like thunder. Every room above, and every cask in the wine merchant's cellar below, appeared to have a separate peal of echoes of its own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door, and walked across the hall and up the stairs. Slowly, too, trimming his candle as he went. Up Scrooge went, not caring a button for its being very dark. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut his heavy door, he walked through his rooms to see that all was right. He had just enough recollection of the face to desire to do that. Sitting room, bedroom, lumber room, all as they should be. Nobody under the table, nobody under the sofa, a small fire in the grate, spoon and basin ready, and the little saucepan of gruel (Scrooge had a cold in his head) upon the hob. Nobody under the bed, nobody in the closet, nobody in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Lumber room as usual. Old fire guard, old shoes, 2 fish baskets, washing stand on 3 legs, and a poker. Satisfied but still nervous, Scrooge made sure to double lock his door. Quite satisfied, he closed his door and locked himself in. Double locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the very low fire to take his gruel. As he threw back his head in the chair, his glance happened to rest upon a bell, a disused bell that hung in the room, and communicated, for some purpose now forgotten, with a chamber in the highest story of the building. It was with great astonishment, and with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked he saw the bell began to swing. Soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. This was succeeded by a clanging noise deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. When he heard the noise much louder on the floors below, then coming up the stairs, then coming straight toward his door, it came through the heavy door, and the spectre passed into the room before his eyes, and upon it coming in, the dying flame leaped up, as though it cried, "I know him! Marley's ghost!" The bell was soon replaced by a clanging noise deep down below, as if someone were dragging chains across the floor. "It's all humbug still! I won't believe it!" Clink, clank, clink. The same face, the very same. Marley in his pigtail, usual waistcoat, tights, and boots. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him, and looking through his waistcoat, could see the 2 buttons on his coat behind. No, nor did he believe it even now, though he looked the phantom through and through, and saw it standing before him, though he felt the chilling influence of its death-cold eyes, and noticed the very texture of the folded kerchief bound about its head and chin, he was still incredulous. "How now?" said Scrooge, caustic and cold as ever. "What do you want with me?"
Much!
Marley's voice, no doubt about it. "Who are you?"
Ask me who I was.
"Who were you, then?"
In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley.
"Mercy! Dreadful apparition, why do you trouble me? Why do spirits walk the earth, and why do they come to me?"
It is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow men, and travel far and wide. And if that spirit goes not forth in life, it is condemned to do so after death.
"Mercy, why do you trouble me?"
Do you believe in me or not?
"I do, I must. But why do you walk the earth? Why do you come to me?"
I cannot tell you all I would. A very little more is permitted to me. I cannot rest. I cannot stay. I cannot linger anywhere. My spirit never walked beyond our counting house. Mark me. In life, my spirit never roved beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing hole, and weary journeys lie before me. I wander through the world doomed to witness all of the things that I did not do while I was alive that could have led to happiness.
"But you were always a good man of business, Jacob," faltered Scrooge, who now began to apply this to himself.
Business? Cried the ghost, wringing its hands. Mankind was my business. The common welfare was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence were all my business. The dealings of my trade but were a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean of my business.
Scrooge was very much dismayed to hear the spectre going on at this rate, and began to quake exceedingly.
Hear me, my time is nearly gone.
"I will, but don't be hard upon me. Don't be flowery, Jacob, pray."
I am here tonight to warn you that you have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my procuring, Ebenezer.
"You were always a good friend to me, thank ye."
Business, yes, but not welfare. Charity, beside you many a day. I am here to warn you, you have a chance to escape my fate. You will be haunted by 3 ghosts.
I think I'd rather not.
You will be haunted by 3 spirits.
Is that the chance and hope you mentioned, Jacob? I think I'd rather not.
Without their visits, you cannot hope to escape the path that I tread. Expect the first tomorrow night, when the bell tolls 1. Expect the second on the next night at the same hour. The third upon the next night, when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake you remember what has passed between us.
It walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the apparition reached it, it was wide open. Scrooge closed the window and examined the door by which the ghost had entered. It was double locked, as he had locked it with his own hands, and the bolts were undisturbed. Scrooge tried to say humbug, but stopped at the first syllable. And being, from the emotion he had undergone, or the fatigues of the day, or his glimpses of the invisible world, or the dull conversation of the ghost, or the lateness of the hour, much in need of repose, he went straight to bed, without undressing, and fell asleep on the instant. Exhausted from all that had happened, Scrooge went straight to bed. He fell asleep in an instant.